This is Karita Parts. I'm here with the amazing Jemele Hill at Athletes and Activism. Thank you for joining me. Now, you moderated several of today's conversations, so I have a two-part question. Why is an event like this so important, but also what do you hope people took away?
Well, I think it's important that athletes feel that they have a space in which it's okay for them to express and support a lot of issues that they're passionate about. I think they can be made to feel by larger society that because they're professional athletes, because maybe in some cases they've risen to a certain income level, that they should just be content with what they have and let society just work itself out in the best way. How we kind of have stopped in many ways looking at athletes as actual people. And so with a conference or a platform like this one, they're able to remind people about what they care about, that they don't just care about their sport, and that they've done a lot of things to try to support their individual communities. So it's just another way, I think, of making athletes, especially athletes of color, feel like they have a sense of belonging.
Okay. And you have publicly denounced the whole narrative of stick to sports. And you spoke a little bit to that. Is that why you feel that so strongly when people say that? Well, and you've even been told that too.
Well, I think it's certainly true historically that athletes have they've never just solely stuck to their sport. So that's number one. The other part too, and why one of the things that made me interested in being a sports journalist is that sports is one of the few things that we do as a society together. We don't worship together. Most of us only eat with people who look like us. But there's something that is unique that happens when it comes to sports, where suddenly, every 4 years for the Olympics, we're all cheering for the same team. I don't care if it's curling or if it's, ice hockey. It doesn't matter. Like, we're all cheering for other Americans to do well. So with that ability to bring people together, that also creates an opportunity for people to take a look at wider social issues, because maybe you didn't understand police brutality just in general, but maybe if you see Colin Kaepernick or LeBron James talking about it, you start becoming more interested in it and more empathetic of it, because you realize that this is something that could happen to some of your favorite athletes and some of their children. So that's why I've always thought that sports just created this incredible avenue for us to have conversations with each other within the context of watching players in sports that we love.
And you mentioned Colin Kaepernick, and I actually talked to Martellus Bennett about this earlier, and I asked him, did he think that if there was more support from the athletic community that the message or the outcome would have been different?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I do feel like there was, in many ways, a failure of his peers to bond together. And had they bonded together maybe more immediately, that would have given him a layer of protection. But I do think, and this is not based on any inside knowledge, but just more or less based off his action and comments, the few comments that he's made, is that I think Colin Kaepernick always looked at it as an individual pursuit. It became a wider protest, but he always looked at it as an individual choice. It just so happened it reverberated to a level that it made other athletes want to reassess how they were contributing to the conversation when it came to police brutality and criminal justice reform. So I do think that there is a lot of truth to what Marcellus was saying, and that part of the reason why certain causes or certain athletes don't realize their power is because athletes don't necessarily always stick together. I mean, your professional future is so short. It's hard for them to see beyond their career or see beyond the moment.
That's true. Now, just shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about your personal journey. You've always been someone who has stood up for themselves. You left ESPN, a huge platform. You're now here at Atlantic, and you're doing more of what I feel like you probably want to do. Can you talk about that journey and the transition and what that was like for you?
Yeah, I know for a lot of people, ESPN is a destination job. And it was a great place. I mean, I worked there for 12 years. It's the best job I've ever had. However, I knew there was other things that I wanted to do. And for me, writing was always my first love. I started in this business as a print journalist. It's kind of who I am at my core. Television was just something that evolved for me, and I happened to be decent at it, but I never was one of those people who felt like I had to be on TV every single day. So now with the stuff that I'm doing now, it's more true to kind of who I am and the kind of journalist that I want to be. Writing for The Atlantic, my podcast on Spotify. Those are things that are more me than, say, hosting the 6 o'clock Sports Center. Even though, again, I realize that people see the platform, they see the position, and they wonder, how could you leave that job? Well, when you feel like you have more to give in different areas, it's not hard to leave, all right? And so I felt like it was just kind of, we had reached that point. It was that time, and I was ready to strike out on my own in a different way in this part of my career, because now, I'm working more with people than for them, and I'm really kind of enjoying having that level of autonomy and freedom.
Great. So just one final question. You were recently engaged, and as women, there's this narrative like you can't have it all. You can't have success. You can't have love, marriage. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, look, what works for me isn't going to necessarily work for everybody. And, I never needed marriage or having a man or being in a relationship. That was never something that I ever thought was going to complete who I was. If I never got married or if I never was engaged, I would have been perfectly fine with that. It just so happens that, despite my thinking and my plans, God laughed. And I found somebody who was, made for me. And I would say that I think we need to define what having it all, or redefine what having it all means. It may not be marriage. It may be something else. It may be, you being a great professional and giving back to your community, and that could be your version of having it all. So I think we have the lives that we're meant to have, and we can't define our lives by what is supposed to be sort of preconceived notions about what makes women happy and what makes us complete. It worked for me. It may not work for everybody else.
That's such a great point. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.